Welcome back to our final segment this weekend on Inside West Virginia Politics as we wrap up the 2021 legislative session here in West Virginia. We are joined right now by Senator Mike Woelfel, Democrat of Cabell County, who is also the minority whip in the state Senate. Good to have you on the program again.
Mark, thank you for having me.
What do you think were the highlights and lowlights of this session?
Well, as a low light, I personally felt like we should have had a lot more transparency. The Capitol building was closed. Our citizens have a constitutional right to be present, to redress their grievances with their legislators, to peaceably assemble. And when you have the bars all over the state overflowing that last 3 or 4 weeks of the session, it just seemed to me that keeping the public out was bad public policy. It looked bad. It was bad.
But some things got done. The state budget got done, and I realize they're trying to be efficient with the protocols because of COVID-19. We're in a different world these days. But what got done, in terms of the budget, broadband, other things that may be considered highlights?
Well, I'll go with another low light. The budget cut higher education, and we cut all the institutions, but particularly we cut Marshall and WVU substantially. And the argument is, well, they're going to get that money, but once your base budget is cut, which it now is for those two institutions, which are the economic engines that really drive our state, once that budget is cut, next year you're like, well, we need to be restored. Well, what happens is, or what I think will happen is, well, we're going to have to just go with what we did for you last year. So we also disrespected public education in terms of pre-K all the way through 12th grade by now funding for-profit public charter schools, where the charter schools that really, I think, some trade on the New York Stock Exchange, they're going to be subsidized by our state tax dollars. And to some extent, also the private schools will benefit by the voucher program. All of this sucks money away from our public education, which wasn't in that great a shape to start with.
I want to talk about maybe the most controversial bill and effort, and that was the Governor Justice's plan to remove the personal income tax in West Virginia. It passed the Senate barely, 18-16. You were one of the most vocal critics on the floor against it because it had a tax on professional services, such as attorneys, which is how you make your living. It had a tax on advertising on television and radio, but not on other newspapers. And you were very vocal in opposition to that advertising tax. Why?
Well, the advertising tax, first of all, we got a bill late in the session from Senator Tarr from the Finance Committee. And we were advertising people like our local newspaper, our billboards, local television, but Google and Facebook were never addressed. The ads that they are able to purchase, or to sell rather, here in West Virginia, no taxation on them. So I thought it was fundamentally unfair just for that reason. That income tax, as it came out, would have me cutting my own taxes substantially and shifting my burden over to people that are working, say, 38 hours a week in a convenience store and maybe 10 hours a week helping somebody cater in that business. The people that work hard, they're not even really middle class, but they're working a couple of jobs. And we would shift all of the benefit from my tax burden over to them. It's a very regressive tax. And the governor, I think he believed in his bill. But what we got from Senator Tarr and the Senate Finance Committee didn't have anything built in to help our middle class, people that make $30,000, $25,000, $35,000. The governor had things in there that would help with that. Now, at the end, we started seeing some changes, modifications, amendments, but we had the food tax back in there. Why do we need that? And I just feel like we have an unaccounted for surplus that we haven't really attributed to any particular spending of $72 million. So for those reasons, I know we made progress with broadband. Broadband was a positive development. And we did a lot of good things. I was able to help with sexual assault victims. Once again, West Virginia moves ahead in the country in terms of how we treat our victims of rape. My zombie remediation bill will be law. That'll help our states, our cities and counties tear down dilapidated housing that is a magnet for crime. So there were high points.
All right. Well, listen, we may be back for a special session later this year, so we'll have you back to talk about that if and when it happens. Again, we want to thank Senator Mike Woelfel, Democrat of Cabell County, who is the minority whip in the West Virginia State Senate, for being with us. Thanks for being here, Mike, and we'll see you back here on Inside West Virginia Politics next week.